Welcome to the Nerd Party.
Welcome back to Houselights. Specifically this time, we are still in the wing of Sherlock Holmes as we examine Sherlock Holmes, the character, as filmed, as put on screen by various directors and played by various people. I am one of your hosts, Inspector John Mills, and I am joined by my esteemed colleagues, possibly somebody in disguise, hiding a childhood trauma, Professor Darren Moser, and the Scotland Yard detective who refuses to believe me that there are poison thorns out there, Detective Tristan Riddell. Gentlemen, I am pleased to have you join me in this examination of a movie that is known primarily for the fact that an effect in it is what everybody hinges on about computer animation. Sherlock Holmes and the Polyhedron of Danger. It's just called Young Sherlock Holmes. It's just some similarities to another film that pop up later on. But directed by Barry Levinson, of all people, and lensed by Stephen Goldblatt, and portraying an alternate version of Sherlock and John Watson meeting while they are young men at school in England. And so, gentlemen, the inevitable question that we always have, because I can never recall, I know this is my first time actually watching this film. Did either one of you encounter this beforehand? Tristan, did you see this before this moment in time?
When we sat down to watch it, I was thinking, okay, yeah, I've never seen this before. You know, this is the first time. Let's get going. And then as I was watching, I was like, wait, how did I know what was going to happen? Wait, how did I know that was going to happen? And it wasn't until the very, very end when Sherlock blows the dart in the person's mouth, like beats her to it, when I realized, I was like, wait, I have seen this before, because I have a strong memory of that situation happening, but I never knew what movie it was from.
I will also put out there that you see it pop up in Indiana Jones and the Crystal Skull, or Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. You see a similar blow dart gag happen.
Well, I've blocked all of that movie.
Don't insult the man.
You know what?
But this was a memory from my
like
childhood.
Crystal Skull. Everybody can go pound sand. Anyway, all right. So, Darren, what about you? Is this your first time coming across young Sherlock Holmes?
Yes, like many film viewers, nothing against the film, but the only experience I have with Sherlock Holmes is repeatedly seeing the one shot of the first CG full realized character in history.
And Pixar.
Which I had no context was a hallucination, which also kind of makes
Right?
a little more
Same
sense
here.
now, because I had no idea. I just like, oh, that's cool. Never
I was
thought
like, is
for
there
once
magic in Sherlock?
why it happened.
Right. I thought it was like
Never
a
crossed
ghost.
my mind.
I thought it was going to be like a ghost, like a Scooby-Doo sort of thing. And so like when it was the hallucination, I was like, oh, okay, all right. This kind of makes sense.
I don't know why. It literally never crossed my mind why it popped out. And it makes total sense. It's a hallucination, because I'm like, oh, yeah, like otherwise it's like magic or something that is not real. That's weird. So
Now, before we get too much into the weeds, or too far into the weeds, I do want to say, for those of you who do not know Barry Levinson's work, first of all, shame on you. And
I was going to get to that, man. Come on now.
Before he did Young Sherlock Holmes, he came off the success of The Natural, just a year prior, and then went on to do Good Morning Vietnam, Rain Man, Bugsy, Toys, Sleepers, Wag the Dog, Sphere, Bandits, which I freaking love. Nobody else likes it. I like it. And then it just kind of goes off the rails a little bit.
Well, let's be honest that Levinson has always had a lot of heat on him, because he has had some really stellar successes, like really artistic successes, regardless of box office. But it's always been a bit hit and miss, because you mentioned Good Morning Vietnam, but Tin Men came out that same year, and that one was not beloved. And you have Rain Man and Avalon. Avalon's sort of overlooked. A lot of people like it. Some people don't care for it too much. Toys was a complete dud. It was dead on arrival. I was there for it. I remember. And I remember going to see it, and I remember how much almost everybody in our group hated the movie at the end of it. Whereas I was like, I don't know, it's all right. but like everybody else was like vitriolic hatred at the movie. And Wag the Dog is a real interesting one. Like it's a super duper interesting one because it is a really well constructed and interesting film. But all of these films have one thing in common, and that is I don't see Barry Levinson, the Barry Levinson who made those movies, reflected in young Sherlock Holmes. Now, Darren, are you very familiar with Barry Levinson films, or is this something where, like, now that we're going through it, you're like, oh yeah, I've seen Rain Man, I've seen Good Morning Vietnam, but
yeah, a handful. I mean, some jump out like Spheres, but not many. And like you said, the ones I do recognize, even if I haven't seen them, it seems like he kind of found that lucky balance of having a hit just often enough to keep his career going. And it's intermixed with, and again, nothing against him overall, but like Hollywood will give you what it so decrees based on how much money you make them. And if you have enough non-hits in a row, it's very hard to recover from. But yeah, I don't know what a Levinson movie should look like. Even the ones I've seen, we're crossing genres, time, historical, science fiction. So he is all over the place, not in a bad way, but just hard to find a bead.
But speaking of that bead, Tristan, you mentioned that he directed The Natural right before this. The Natural comes out in 1984. It is still a beloved film, and with good reason. It's a great film. But I do not see the director of The Natural in the director of the young Sherlock Holmes. And I would have to say, and I want to bounce this off of you.
You can't see it because everything's lit by candlelight.
Well, no, but like in all honesty, like when I look at those two films, I see instead somebody who is being forced to be like more Spielberg. It's an Amblin production. And there's very much a feeling of, listen, you made it to the big time, kid. Now prove you can get this across the line and we'll let you keep playing.
Yeah, this felt much more like a Spielberg picture with Columbus. Like it feels like Columbus in Spielberg, honestly. And I think Levinson probably was a worker on this. It was, I don't, like you said a couple of times, I don't see Levinson in this at all. And I think it's a really weird statement because, you know, granted this was early on in his career, but Levinson himself, you know, like is a presence. He's a well-known producer and director, and I think you're right on the money. I think this is it feels like a pale Spielberg imitation, and it's, you know, penned by Columbus, and so it has that tonality to it, like it has that rhythm that you see with Columbus, like when you look at Gremlins or the Goonies or even the first Harry Potters, like you see that moment of discovery, of meeting, like of the it's very much that young person perspective and journey, and it's hard to move away from that. Levinson very much feels like the person who says yes, no, and make sure the trains are running on time.
So Darren, you know, Levinson is putting this together. It's penned by Columbus, as Tristan says, and it earns its PG-13. My question for you is, watching this, do you feel that this is still a PG-13 movie, or is this PG-13 for the time?
Yeah, it's mid 80s. And granted, there's a lot of like scary looking stuff, especially with the hallucinations, with things like coming alive. And it's weird because it's still very claymation-esque. Like the effects are very obviously effects, but they're still disturbing. Like I would not want that to happen in my room or place of whatever. But yeah, remind me, it was 85, same year as Temple of Doom, right?
No, Temple of Doom was 84.
Okay, so
and I think Temple
right
of Doom was the one that sort of like my memory of PG-13 always gets mixed up, but I think that like Temple of Doom was sort of like the breaking point where
was we need a new rule because it would have been PG-13.
It was Temple of Doom and something else. I can't remember.
Yeah,
but kind of broke the camel's back.
It would have been R, but Spielberg had the weight to pull and get the MPAA to leave him alone.
And they're like, we need something in the middle. So, okay, so this was PG-13. Yeah, I mean, it tracks, especially for mid-80s, It would have. I mean, we could have had history books differently if this had been before the creation of PG-13. I think it would have been another contender for. It's not PG, but it's. I can see why you didn't want it to be R. But one other thing I wanted to say as we were talking about the. I don't remember what word we used, but in the fact that it's kind of, I don't want to say copying, but I'm going to say copying with the Spielberg sense and stuff, because I don't know about you guys, but I felt like someone again, I know we sound very critical here on Houselights. We're just dissecting things, but the music, it felt like someone gave the composer 20 records of Williams and said,
Yes.
make it sound like that. I so many times felt like, is this John Williams? It was so close. Like,
Yes.
listen to my homework and make it different. Close. And so it's interesting hearing you guys talk about the visuals and the story pacing being Spielberg-esque. I mean, he's an executive producer, he's influencing. So it was this weird movie of not the people you thought were the ones directing and doing the music and doing this, but heavily influenced.
I'll tear the Band-Aid off and say, on top of the music, on top of the visual sensibility, Columbus basically, like I made the joke when we opened up, it's Sherlock Holmes and the Polyhedron of Peril. Like it, at one point I'm like, is this the Temple of Doom set? Did they just hold on to it or something like that? Like it's very obviously heavily influenced, and it wouldn't, and I know that
Did they get
ILM
a discount on all of the fake blood or whatever they bought for Temple, and they just said, hey, let's just take it over to Soundstage 5. They're shooting young Sherlock Holmes. I mean, I know they weren't, but
ILM actually is credited as a producer on this film, like the entity ILM. And it's like, it wouldn't be surprising to me where they were like, oh, we're going to produce because, we need something, but we need it faster than coming from the ground up, because it's disorienting, because here we are in the age of AI where everybody's like, oh, everything's being copied from, itself and stuff like that. I'm like, everything we're talking about here, whether it's the way it gets lensed, the way it's scored, the way it's structured, down to the set level, it's like, it's as if somebody just looked and copied and said, you know what, make me a movie that is just like Temple of Doom, but with a young Sherlock Holmes. But with all of those negatives, there are still some positives. So Tristan, what I wanted to throw to you was on the positives. I mean, I think the cast is pretty solid in this. And I think that, they bring in the right amount of sort of like charm to everything. Do you agree with that or not?
I think I'm always a big fan of Anthony Higgins, who played Professor Wraith. I really do believe that he kind of elevates everything that he's in. And I thought Sophie Ward, who played Elizabeth, did a very fine job. I feel like that could have been a throwaway role. I feel like that could have been a role that anybody could have played and just kind of in the background. But I honestly believe that she was her own character, had her own ideas of things. I'm a little mixed on Nicholas Rowe as Sherlock and Alan Cox as Watson. I'm not quite sure why. I don't know if I can articulate it as to why I'm a little mixed. I don't think they did a bad job by any means. In fact, I'm leaning more towards good, but I didn't feel the chemistry between them. And I think if you don't have good chemistry between the two leads, even if they're good on their own separately, it doesn't really matter. What did you guys think about the chemistry between the two?
Now, are you meaning chemistry, or are you meaning Holmes evolving into the Holmes we know? Because I've read that, Spielberg and Columbus really wanted this to be, he's more led by the heart. He's less, cold and all of that. Like, he's young and he's vibrant, and he's not the main characteristics we know of as Holmes. So do you mean it was that kind of part of the off-putting, or are you specifically just talking about you have a Holmes and Watson, that duo needs to strike a chord or it's not succeeding?
It's all about the duo. Like, I completely get that, like, a young Sherlock isn't the real Sherlock that we know and love, because I feel like Rowe did a good job of, like, weaving in those aspects of Sherlock where there were times when he was short with Watson. There was times when he was just like, come on, man, like it's elementary, like you can tell that he definitely has that superiority complex, but it's nowhere near as concrete as it would be later in life. But no, it's very much that second part of what you talked about, how the back and forth, the duality of it. I just didn't feel like it was there. And I think it's hard, especially when you're a young actor.
I agree, but I think they're not helped at all by the structure of it. And I don't think they're helped at all by the fact that, Levinson is, to the point you made earlier, this is a director who's, he's following the rules. He's doing what he's supposed to do. He's showing up. The producer said, I want this, so I'm going to deliver this. And I can't disappoint Mr. Spielberg because he'll end my career right here and now. So I'm going to deliver what he asks me to do. And I think that, that's really, I think, one sense of it, but I think a larger sense is the structure of the story itself. Is it does not, the script itself does not successfully balance the need of Sherlock and Watson and Sherlock and Elizabeth. It doesn't commit to either one enough. So basically everybody loses in that circumstance. So that's where I would leave that.
That's really spot on. I would wholeheartedly agree with that. Absolutely.
Cool. I do want to ask, though, in terms of the effects, because everybody talks about the effects. Darren, you're a builder. You have a certain eye for these sorts of things. There are some more practical effects that happen in here. Do you think that the film is a success in terms of what it builds out, in terms of the sets and in terms of the practical effects that they have? Do you think that those are successful, or do you think that it's something where they put so much effort into trying to get certain effects across the line that the others suffer?
No, I think the effects worked pretty well. Like, I never felt personally drawn out of the movie because of them. There's a little bit of that 80s smudge to them where they're, it's not quite photoreal, or you can kind of tell that it was done in a technique. But because of the era, I just let that slide because it's literally the cutting edge of what they can do. They're using the tools they have. They're obviously using, stop animation and CG and like every trick they can. And they're pulling off hallucinations, which is a really interesting thing to do because it's meant to be surreal. It's not meant to 100% look real. Where they kind of lost me, and this is maybe more of a story point, I did not care for the flying machine. It felt a little bridge too far. I'm like, so we're also inventing flying machines, like
we beat the Wright brothers essentially. Is what we're doing. Like, I know it's a movie, but at the same time,
look, Janeway can do it in her hologram program.
Yeah, right.
I'm okay with that. But this was, it took me out of it more than anything else. I was like, why is this a thing?
I agree wholeheartedly with you on that, because I think that right there, that's something that was an unnecessary reach.
It's very unnecessary.
Cutting it would have provided more time in the script for the Watson and Elizabeth relationships with Holmes to develop. And I think that's where we go wrong.
I was already sold on his relationship with his mentor, the professor who tinkered. Like, I got it within 5 minutes. And then they kept teaching us that relationship for quite a while because there's this payoff in the third act with the flying machine. And that was 15 minutes of total screen time. I would have rather had been reinvested in some of the other characters, like you're saying.
Especially since getting there could have been solved through so many other means that you could have invented.
And also at the beginning, like when the first guy did it, and then like he's treating it like, oh man, I failed, but it's okay. I'll have to rebuild it and I'll try again. I'm like, what do you mean you failed? You literally invented flight. You just hit a tree.
Right. Yes. It's a movie that I think is so, it's so caught up with what it's trying to achieve that it never stops to consider what it's doing. And I think that one of the unfortunate victims is I do think that Stephen Goldblatt, I think he frames it well. Like the shots look good, and I think that the practical effects look convincing. And so I'm along for the ride in those terms. I watched this with my youngest, which is always dicey because the scary bird coming to life and attacking the guy, I like had to look a couple of times. That's why I was asking the PG-13 thing, is I'm watching it with a 10-year-old and I'm like, is this too scary? We can turn this off. I can watch this by myself. Is this too scary? No. And then basically the way we started defusing
she
it.
like this, no, Dad, as I look through my fingers,
Nah.
I'm good.
She was doing all right because her whole thing was like, she was like, that's just a puppet. And I was like, exactly. Right. You're fine. But there's also diffusing it was a matter of when we would go in and the person was setting up the hallucination was saying, what do you think is going to happen now? And so it was fun to watch it with a kid and say like, oh, what do you think their hallucination is going to be? And then like the betting, and then like one of us would be right. And it's like, oh yeah. But then, she got mad because I blurted out like the solution, like the who was really behind everything. And she was like, Dad, she hates it when I do that. But all that to say, viewing it with a kid was really interesting because it really does sort of temper the reaction to some of the negative stuff that we're highlighting, because I can tell you there are plenty of 80s movies where I show it to my kid now and it's boring because it's just the sensibilities are different now. The storytelling pace is different. But Tristan, is this a movie where you could, this is a movie that made, I think it was like 3.5 times its budget. So it's a success, but there are no sequels to it and people don't really talk about it too much. Given that I've watched it with a kid who dug it and we see this measure of financial success, why do you think that young Sherlock is only remembered for the stained glass?
I think it was one of those movies that was the right story for the right time. I think if you look at the 80s and the middle of the road childhood movie, like this is not a movie for young children. This is not a movie for, typically this is not a movie that's geared towards adults. It's geared towards adults who want to take their 11, 12, 13-year-old kids plus to the movies. And if you look at things like Gremlins and Goonies, like in other Columbus movies, and you look at the success of Indiana Jones, it's the 80s was built for that time and that specific demo. And this is one of those movies, but I just don't think it has lasting power because of the reasons that you talked about, where I think the structure is odd. It doesn't know what to focus on. And the most remarkable thing is from a technical standpoint, where I think it's one of those things where if you actually had Spielberg direct it and you actually had John Williams score it, and maybe you had who was the 80s writer for Spielberg? I'm blanking right now, but basically
I'm just thinking of editor would have been like Michael Kahn would have been the go-to
it was
editor
edited
for
by
him.
Kahn, like everything like that. So basically, if you had the 80s A game, the Spielberg's crew essentially doing this film, I think it would be talked about. But you're getting imitation. It's imitation crab meat is what it is.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that's probably the reason. It's like people went to go see it because they were the right demo, and it's Amblin Entertainment. I know that logo, and then that was it. But the thing is that it wasn't like, oh my God, you have to go see this again, or it's repeated viewings like Star Wars or something like that. I think that's what it is. It's an imitation, and it came out at the right time to make its money back and then some, but it doesn't have staying power.
So, Darren, I rolled the dice on showing this to my kid. Would you show this to your kids?
No, but not for the reason of like I'd be worried about them being scared.
My kids
I
would be
would
scared.
probably not, just because I would rather show them something better or something that has a more sentimental connection to me. Like I don't feel like I need to waste the night on watching this. It's not enough to be, I'll show them a clip of the stained glass window on YouTube. Like that's enough to cover it.
Well, we just got Darren's rating. Don't waste the night.
Yeah. Don't waste the night.
Wow, that's a pretty... Wow, you've really lowered the boom there, man.
I really agreed, though, with what Tristan was saying about... I mean, this was December 4th, 85. It's a Christmas movie. You're a parent with a tween which isn't even a word yet. And, you're like looking at the movie list and you're like, oh yeah, young Sherlock Holmes. I didn't even think about it until you guys were mentioning it. But of course this is aimed as kids. Of course this is not like, oh yeah, mom and dad are going to go to a date night to see this movie. No, you're really not going to see this movie unless you're bringing your kids, unless you are a die-hard Sherlock Holmes buff and you're going to see anything with the word Sherlock on it.
Speaking of which, oh my gosh. Okay, so this movie, not once, but twice, gave qualifiers that this was an original story and not based on anything by Sir Arthur Conan Doyle. Like, okay, even when you tell a biblical story, you only get one qualifier at the beginning. This movie felt the need to give it to you twice. How fanatic are Holmesians fans? Does anybody know any Holmes fans?
Absolutely not a single one, no. I know of Nicholas Meyer being a big Sherlock Holmes fan, but that's about it. That's the extent of it for me. I have yet in my life to run across somebody who's actually read a Sherlock Holmes story. And that is not a condemnation of Sherlock Holmes. That is
no, not at all.
Sherlock Holmes is basically like a filmed entertainment thing. There's even a new series out with him. And like it's
now, as we record this, we have Young Sherlock, a TV show that's going on right now.
Did they have to say the TV show so people didn't confuse it with the movie that we're talking about right now?
They dropped Holmes.
It's now so just Young Sherlock.
Yeah. Yes. Like Young Sheldon. But I do want to point out that the movie doing as well as it did, though, while it's, not as memorable maybe as we'd say, December 1985, okay, the top grossing films in December 1985 were Back to the Future, Rocky IV, Spies Like Us, and Jewel of the Nile. So those are, now Spies Like Us is not a good movie. It does not hold up. And Jewel of the Nile was a relatively disappointing sequel to Romancing the Stone. But Rocky IV and Back to the Future are in theaters at the same time as this movie. And this movie still rakes in 3.5 times its budget. That's pretty impressive.
It's impressive. But now that you mentioned it, I mean, Back to the Future ate this movie's lunch, like hands down.
It ate everybody's lunch.
It ate everybody's lunch. But like that just sucked all the air out of the room. Like, well, yeah. And like Rocky you said, John, it made a decent chunk of money for its budget. But if you saw this and Back to the Future on a weekend, you're going to go back to watch Back to the Future again. You're not going back to watch this again.
If I had the choice between Young Sherlock or Back to the Future, and my kid came to me and said, which one should I watch? I'm like, well, that's a no-brainer. Like, do you want incest or do you want CGI character?
In fact,
which one do you want?
I'm going to watch Back to the Future with my kids again, just to spite young Sherlock Holmes.
And meanwhile,
I don't even know it, but
meanwhile, I'm taking my kids to go see Rocky IV Fathom re-releases in the movie theater. So there you go. Rocky
Are you
IV.
really doing that?
Oh, I already did. I already went with one of my kids to a Rocky IV re-release.
That's awesome.
Because Rocky IV was always like a holiday movie. I mean, not just Rocky IV, but like the Rocky movies always came out around Thanksgiving. So, fine tradition. But actually, other notable 1985 December releases, The Color Purple came out on December 20th, and Disney reissued 101 Dalmatians. So, I mean, this is a really big, competitive field. I don't think it's any surprise why young Sherlock Holmes would be lost in the shuffle of time. But it's also what a statement in the embarrassment of riches that 1980s box office hits could be back then. I mean, good gravy. That's some heavy hitters there.
I mean, I don't know. I'd go as far as to say I don't think anyone would talk about this movie if it wasn't for the special effects, and that
probably
like today.
Yeah,
like the fact that is kept. I mean, we're all the outliers in our love of films for sure, but the fact that that's really the only reason any of us even know of this movie, I think it's.
I completely agree with you. I completely agree with you. Now we sort of dragged Bruce Broughton's score with being pale imitation of John Williams, but and this will sound like such a snarky way to put it, but honestly, Darren, is it at least a good imitation of John Williams, or is it just an annoying imitation?
Yeah, it's like, what is your definition of good imitation? Like, it was close enough where it made me be like, well, why didn't you just get Williams? Like, what? I always want to look up, like, what was he doing right there?
Yeah, he was too busy at the time. I can't remember what he was doing, but they Spielberg went to him first, obviously.
Obviously, yeah. It's a rare thing where Spielberg, now he didn't direct this, but he produced it, and it's not a collaboration. And you're like, okay, obviously it wasn't enough to pull him off whatever he was on and doing at the time. Yeah, it's hard because I love Williams' style. It's what I really grew up on. I really enjoy music that has themes, for the characters and locations and things like that, which this does have. But this is the kind of, if I were to use this score again, I would use it in a guess that composer game to mess with people, where
That's fair.
they'd have like, some Horner scores and some Williams scores, and then I'd throw in young Sherlock Holmes, and they are dead sure it's Williams, and I'm like, ha, I got you. It's not him. But that would be mean, but I would do it.
So the inevitable thing that I always love to throw at Tristan, and I won't even pull up any of my favorite jokes, but this is This is edited by Stu Linder, who had worked with Levinson on Diner and The Natural, and it basically went on, and his career has been basically working with Barry Levinson. And in terms of the editing, Tristan, do you see anything that stands out here? Or does this look, again, like somebody who's just a worker who showed up and said, okay, I just know the beats and I know how to assemble this because everything's storyboarded and I don't have to think too much?
No, this was fine editing. Like this, and I say that as a compliment. This was good editing. This was editing that did not draw attention to itself. This was not flashy. This was not in your face. This got the job done. And there are movies where the editing is, where you look at it and you're just like, man, the editing was phenomenal because of what it was able to accomplish. And then there's other times when the editing is just terrible and you can absolutely notice it. And then there's editing that you don't notice. And honestly, you're looking at like 10% of the time on one spectrum, it's editing you notice and it's good. And then you have 10% on the other side of the spectrum where it's editing you notice because it's bad. And then you have about 80% in the middle where it does its job. And that's where this movie is. And that is a huge compliment because that's where you should be most of the time. And there were actually times during the hallucination scenes where I think towards the beginning, I think when the guy was at the diner, and also poor man at the diner, or right. I mean at the restaurant, like no one is getting up to help this man. No one's saying like, hey, what's wrong? Why are you freaking out? They're all just sitting, freaking British, they're all just sitting there and this, this guy's being loud,
I think bystander effect is very well documented, so I'm willing to buy it.
I mean, the guy in the back, I saw him looking down, going, "Keep calm, carry on. Keep calm, carry on. Keep calm, carry on."
It was very much "keep calm, carry on, keep calm, carry on."
Well,
and also British people, I love you. I'm just joking, but
right,
during
letters
that scene,
to Tristan Riddell at Chicago, Illinois 60652.
When he's looking at his hands and those creatures all around and everything like that, and then all of a sudden it wears off. And he's looking again at his hands. It was a perfect edit. It was beautiful. I mean, it was, there wasn't even a fade. It didn't even look like a jump cut. It just was gone. And for the time being, that had to have been hard to achieve. And that's just one example of it, all throughout. So this was stellar. Now, at a macro level, as you hear me talk about, this structure could have been redefined. But if you look at Columbus's script, it very much has that hero's journey of meeting the characters, the investigation, climax. It's just boom, boom, boom. Like it's that basic 3-act structure. And so I don't know how much you'd be able to kind of flip around and shuffle and everything like that. But I don't lay that. I usually don't lay macro at the editor's feet. I lay micro at the editor's feet. I lay macro at producer and director.
Fair enough. I do want to throw out there as well that Stu Linder also was an assistant editor on The Man Who Shot Liberty Valance. So he had been working for some time because that came out in 1962. And that is, I'm just going to sidestep here real quick, and I'm going to say that is one of the greatest films that's ever been made in the history of film. And if anybody hasn't seen it, this was my excuse to say, go and see it because it ties into Mr. Stu Linder, who was an assistant editor on that film. So, though he was uncredited. So there you go. Now we've covered the editing, the music, the cinematography, and, some of the structural challenges that are there. But Darren, what is one thing about young Sherlock Holmes that you think is a standout that's great, where you looked at it, where you go, regardless of everything else, I loved this. What was it that you loved?
Well, there's a scene with a stained glass window, and it. No, I'm just kidding.
Oh, I missed that.
No.
When did that happen? I don't know.
I will say, I really like the structure of the inciting incident of this story. I love how it picks up with Watson coming to a new school, and Holmes is already there, and just the fact that I know it's young Sherlock Holmes and it's meant to be different, but I like how they slide right into, oh, that's right. He has no authority. He doesn't have the clout to have the inspector listen to him and take it seriously. And so he has to solve it on his own. Now, Holmes has always kind of solved things on his own, but he's also really had his hand in the police to back him up. And so I guess overall the simple response of what I'm getting at is I liked how they approached the young Sherlock Holmes of being, a schoolboy who's going to become the man that we see and know in literature. But yeah, it just felt very well constructed in that regard. And again, the very beginning, I liked the beginning, how, oh, Watson came over. Now, I mean, you have to kind of hold your breath for a second and be like, but now these characters are meeting earlier than I think they met in every other story of Sherlock Holmes. But I looked past that.
Oh, did you not see the two qualifications that they had at the beginning and at the end?
Yeah, no.
Who of you stayed for the end credit scenes? Like it was
course.
The Avengers Initiative.
No, I missed it.
No, I thought it was terrific because everything kept going while the credits were going. And I was like, and my kid and I were sitting there and it was like, yeah, we were like, okay, well, they got to be showing this for some reason. Now, I enjoyed that, but probably my favorite thing from this was, in all honesty, I got a kick out of how Elizabeth, and again, to the script's credit, and the way, the way that Sophie Ward plays it, Elizabeth is the one that figures out how to get Sherlock out of peril by tying it to the carriage's axle and everything. Like, they actually made her smart and capable, and that was a lot of fun, for a movie to do, especially at that time. And because the easy thing is to have Sherlock do everything and figure it all out, and then Watson does one thing, and instead they gave her something to do. So bravo. Now, with that end credits thing, I got kind of a kick out of it. I was like, oh yeah, I knew it. He's Moriarty for real. But Tristan, my kid didn't know what the hell that meant. Do you think that was a wasted stinger?
No, I don't think that was a wasted stinger at all. I think
really?
it was cute. I think it was fun. If you missed it, nothing was missed. But if you did see it and knew what was going on, it meant a lot. Like, if you're a Holmes fan, you're like, oh, cool. Okay, this is what they're doing. Like, they're going to make another one. Just like when you saw Lost in Space, you're like, they're totally setting it up for a sequel. We're totally going to see that.
Thank goodness they didn't do it. Thank goodness they didn't do that.
Hey, whoa.
No. I sit here. I take your Barb Sturner movies. No. You know what? Big man, come on. You can take a swing anytime you want to.
Guilty pleasure is Lost in Space.
Okay, you
anyway.
cannot sit there and defend Crystal Skull while simultaneously.
Look, it's okay. Last
and
bad,
yet
you
I
kill
persist.
a bad guy buys the beer. It's okay.
No,
but it's funny that it's funny that you bring that up because every single movie we watch, my 9-year-old says, "Oh, what's at the end?" We're like, "What do you mean? What's at the end of the credits?" We're like, "Nothing."
Marvel can go straight to hell.
Sorry to break it to you. 99.9% of all films in history have nothing at the end of the movie.
Oh my gosh. Oh, Marvel. Ugh, if there's one. But Tristan, what is one thing that you thought was great that regardless of any other flaws, what's one thing in this movie where you're like, that was really cool. I really enjoyed that.
Oh,
All right, there's his rating, Darren. There you
had
go.
my whole speech to come up with an idea, Tristan.
I know, I did. I want to say, like, the CGI character. That was awesome. That holds up, man. Like, I was looking.
It does.
And like the only thing that was a little weird was just when they cut out the candlesticks when it went. Mm-hmm. When the candlesticks were in front of it, that was the only thing that got a little weird. And you got to give it, you got to give them some slack.
Yeah, it's like traveling
on that
man.
one.
That's still tricky.
Yeah, hell yeah. And like other than that, it was phenomenal. I mean, seriously, like you could put that in a movie today, and people wouldn't bat an eye. Honestly, I'm not being hyperbolic on that.
In all honesty, it's kind of crazy to think that 8 years later was dinosaurs.
Mm-hmm.
Like the accelerated rate at which the technology matured, but that still doesn't tell me what you thought was great in this movie.
Sorry, I had to think Jurassic Park for a second and totally just thought the Carl Sinclair, Jim Henson's Dinosaurs TV show, and I'm like,
oh no,
I'm like that can't be what he means, Darren. What are you missing?
No, I got my math wrong. I was talking about the stellar CG effects in Lost in Space. That was my mistake. Especially with the little monkey they found. But Tristan, what did you love in Sherlock Holmes?
Monkey, those effects are awesome.
Space monkey.
Mm-hmm.
Sans monkey is awesome.
Sure.
Honestly, man, this movie is so mid, as the kids say. I think there is nothing great about this movie, but there's nothing garbage either.
Fair.
And I think that's the thing. Is that like, is this a terrible movie? No, it's not at all. Is it a good movie? No. It's not. It's just a movie, and it's neither here nor there. Now, there's several times that, you know, people will complain about a movie or something, and then like, you know, like what do they say? Like between garbage and masterpiece, there's this wonderful valley of okay, and this is one of those movies where it's just okay. It's just okay. Not every movie has to change your life. Was I hoping for more? Yes. It's not good. It's not great, but it's also not terrible. It's just okay. And so I can't really say anything is great.
Okay. Well, I mean, I think that brings us to the point where we should give our final thoughts and ratings. And I think
no,
Tristan,
it's just okay. Apparently there's ratings mean nothing, Tristan. There's no point in rating anything.
All right.
When you say don't waste your night, you know, we already know where it's going to go.
Well, I think the audience is waiting with bated breath for everything. But Tristan, you just wound up, so I'll let you take a swing here. What are any other final thoughts you have and your rating?
Well, because I say that this is a mid film, this is straight down the middle. You know, you got 5 stars, you got 0 stars, you just slash it in half. It's 2.5, just like 7% solution. I give it 2.5.
Okay. I will go next, actually. And I will say that, yeah, this movie is very obviously in search of a final identity, that it is a movie where, honestly, one of the things that I admire about it is I can see the impulse to do young Indiana Jones here, up to and including using it as a test bed for new effects. And it's like a concept that should have been developed for television before television was capable of showing this. Like it really is a movie serial mentality. And I think it's kind of a shame that it just found the wrong time for expression. I see what you're saying, Tristan. I give it a little bit better than dead middle of the road. I give it 3 stars because I did enjoy it. My kid enjoyed it. We had a good time watching it. And yeah, I'm grading it generously, but I'm going to stick by that. And I think that Darren, while you said he's like, oh, I don't want to spend a whole evening watching this, I think he could do a lot worse too, especially with 80s movies, because this is one that I can come at right now and give it 3 stars. And I don't. There are other 80s movies where I talk about showing them to my kids and I live in terror of doing it because I'm like, oh, please don't let them hate it because I know this doesn't hold up as well as my memory tells me it does, sort of thing. So I have proof that this is a 3-star movie because this is the first time I encountered it. So
like
there you go.
You look at an 80s film and you're just like, oh God, like how sexist is this going to be? How homophobic is this going to be? We just don't know. We just don't know.
You know, I mean, there are definitely questions about some of the films that I watched in the 80s. It's like, I don't want to revisit this really. But Darren, that brings us to you. What are your final thoughts and rating?
Yeah, like I said, I really liked the lack of agency Holmes had over the adults. Like, he got told what to do. He got expelled, got put in detention. All had classmate rivalries and all sorts of things. So all that worked. It was, as a young Sherlock Holmes story, it worked. And then it became like Temple of Doom, and like so much so that I was like, were you like sitting next to the other screenwriter and like you kind of glance at his notes like once in a while?
Hum Num Shivai.
Yeah.
Cover your heart, Sherlock. Cover your heart. But all that to say, I'm going to give it a 2. It is a piece of cinema history, but I think like all the things we've stated, we can see why it has not risen as a classic, risen as something, that is worth revisiting, except for in an analytical eye, like a podcast, or if you're enjoying looking over the list of ILM best hits, for the decade. So 2 stars for me.
Wow. Brutal. So Darren is the heartless one this time. Tristan refuses to pick a lane, and I'm the kind one. So this all works out. It's sort of our personalities, I guess. But Darren, we're not done with Sherlock yet. Oh no, Sherlock won't let us go yet. Well, what are we talking about next week?
Next week, we come to the only Sherlock movie all 3 of us had actually seen before starting this wing. We go to 2009's Sherlock Holmes, starring Robert Downey Jr., next on Houselights.
Join the revolution. Join the Nerd Party.